Brilliant. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining to the meeting. 29 people in here at the moment, which is brilliant. My name is Tom Hartley. So looking through the list of names, know a few names in here. Lots of people I don't know, which is brilliant. And you signed up obviously for a workshop this morning, all about maximizing your time during coaching sessions. So in terms of the format, I'm going to talk and kind of go through these slides for about the next 45 minutes. The idea really is to give you some practical ideas that you can take away and apply back into your own world when you get back on the grass and when you start coaching again. But nobody really wants to hear me rattle on for 45 minutes. So if at any point through the workshop there's something that comes up that interests you, you've got a question on, whatever it might be, stick it in the chat box and I'll do my best to kind of talk around it and kind of answer any questions that you might have, so it's really applicable to you and what's important to you. So just in terms of me, I won't stay on here for too long. Don't really like talking about myself that much. So I'm a UAPB coach, just starting my A license this season. Always worked in the foundation phase. Always wanted to kind of specialize in working with younger players. So I've kind of hold an FA Advanced Youth Award and currently studying towards a master's in education. In terms of the master's stuff, I found that really useful in terms of developing as a coach. You can take theories and research-led information and then apply that into your coaching. You can have some real fun with that and you can bring it to life and try things out. So that's been really interesting for me. So I'm a tutor for Barts and Bucks FA, been delivering coach ed with the County FA for about 3.5, 4 years now. My full-time role though is at UK Coaching. So I'm a senior coach developer there, which effectively means I look after the development of coach developers and coaches. Been there for a month, so I'm quite new. So don't really know the nuts and bolts of the job at the moment, really getting into that. I spent the last 3 years at Arsenal as a development manager for their women and girls programs and the girls under 14s academy coach. On Twitter as well, so if you're interested in this and fancy following, at Thomas W. Hartley. Shameless plug there. Cool. Objectives for the workshop this morning. So 3 things really for me that would be really useful. One is to just share a range of ideas with you guys on why it's important to maximize your time at coaching sessions. Look at a number of strategies that are going to help you get the most out of your time, and then really give you some space to allow you to think about changes you might want to make to your coaching practice to do more of this stuff in the future. And then kind of the last 10 minutes or so, we'll open it up for a bit of a Q&A. So if anybody's got any questions or wants to go a bit deeper into anything, we can explore that as well. Thanks to everyone who's kind of putting this information in the chat box too. So just reminding you of that initial question, to just for you to really think about what would help your coaching the most to leave this workshop. So if anything springs to mind, please do stick that in the box. Cool. Okay. Oh, don't want to zoom in. Zoom out there. Doesn't really work. So the question was going to be, and I'll tell you what, I'll just go back a slide quickly. When you're coaching and when you're at practice, what do you spend your time doing? So I appreciate you're going to be managing and running your session, but what are all the other things that as a coach and someone working in grassroots football where you spend your time? So have a little think, just fire any answers into that chat box. What do you do when you're at training that isn't necessarily the things you want to be doing or would always be spending your time doing? Any takers? Anyone feeling brave? Cool. Thanks, Joe. So some discussion. So maybe that might be with the players in your group, but also with parents. Mo, yeah, managing behaviour, absolutely. We're going to spend loads of time doing that. Wendy, parents, yeah. Laura, yeah, absolutely. We've got to kind of set our practice up, deal with people coming in late. That's always a challenge, isn't it? Billy, absolutely. Couldn't be more right, but depending on whoever we're working with. Yeah, I take it, Billy, you're not with the under 21s, but yeah, shoelaces massively. Anything else? What? A couple more? Anything else you spend more time doing that maybe you rather wouldn't? Cool, Wendy, brilliant. That's a great example. So if you're working with your assistant or your co-coaches, sharing the work that you're doing so everyone's on the same page. Awesome. Okay, right. I'll put the next slide up. So really, this was just an idea of maybe some of the things as coaches that we have to spend our time doing around the things that we really like doing at training. So we've got our small-sided games, we've got our practices, but then it's the setup, it's letting the players have a go at just playing, managing behaviour, we had that one, injuries, waiting for the last group to get off the AstroTurf so we can get on and train. So there's so many things which go on around our practice that maybe are really difficult to control where and when we manage them. So I guess for me, this workshop is about, well, what things can we control at our practice that help give the players the most playing opportunity and gives you a chance as a coach to spend your time doing the things you really want to do. So the next slide really, for me, actually thinks about it's about coaching. So giving the players the opportunity to go and play, handing loads of that over to them, using lots of games as a way of doing that, along with kind of different practice types that kind of help that skill acquisition and giving players the opportunity to learn. And then within that, making the most time at your chat breaks, drink breaks, being really clear about how you explain things to the group, and using time to set the practice up effectively so you don't have to spend too much time moving from part 1 to part 2 or whatever else it might be. Okay, so got a few practical things just to give you some ideas on, and again, if throughout this, if there's any questions at all, please file them into the chat box. So for me, first of all, so imperative is your time planning, because even if you get a minute to plan, or you're spending a minute more planning than you were, that's so important. And I fully appreciate that for a lot of us, coaching isn't a full-time job. We're rushing from work, we're kind of getting dinner to the kids, we're doing loads of other stuff before we get to our training, but actually having an effective plan or an idea of where you want to try to get to will help you really get the most out of the time training. So a few points for when you're planning and when you're thinking about practice design. And for all of you who have been through your different coaching qualifications, obviously there's a huge amount of time on courses spent helping you get better at planning. I find it quite an individual process. You've got people who want to write loads, draw a picture, some bullet points, and really that's down to you. But going through that process is a really important one. So first of all, just thinking about your learning outcome. So think about something that maybe is really clear that you want the group to achieve today. Because if you can work that out in your head and explain that to the group that you're working with, then you've probably got more chance of getting to it or getting closer to it throughout the practice. Or, as you'll find on all the FA courses, and which is the right way to coach, if you make your practices player-centered, involve them in that process. So when I was at Arsenal, some of the work that we did wasn't just the coaches setting objectives for the sessions. Actually, you would work with the players in your groups to identify some co-objectives. What's really important to them, what's important to us, and find a balance between the two. Because actually, if you're just telling the players what they should be doing all the time, that might not match up with their aspirations and why they want to come and play. Equally, if you just ask the kids for what they want to do, you might go off in a completely different direction to what's good for them and their development. So if you find a middle ground and you're almost that buffer, that could work really well. So a clear learning outcome, practice that links to a game. There was a coach who's much older and wiser than me. I won't say older, much wiser than me. Who said, if it doesn't look like football, then don't do it. And I quite like that in the essence of think about the types of practices that you deliver, and how much do they look like the game of football. So if you're doing inverted commas drills and players are repetitively passing the ball back and forth or dribbling through cones, well, actually, there's not necessarily many factors in those types of practice that help the players identify triggers that will then help them in the game. So if you can play lots of games where you've got flat pitch, thin pitch, 2 goals at each end, different channels, different types of organisation, then that will help the players identify moments in training that transfer into the game that will help them get better at making really good, quick decisions. Games are easy to understand. If you have to make loads and loads and loads of notes about all your different progressions and you pass here and then move here and then player B dribbles around to here, if you have to take ages doing it and have to check your plan to be able to explain it, then how do you expect the children in your group to do it? So really think about games that are really easy to understand, and then almost scaffold the learning. So throughout the practice, then you can add layer upon layer, so the children can kind of continue to be challenged and stretched throughout. The fourth one here, the clock, allowing time. Like this is so important, and I think this could link back to what you see your role as a coach, and how you really like to spend your time while you're coaching. So think about, if you were to make a list in front of you about a breakdown of the percentage of what you do during your session as a coach and how you spend your time when you're actually coaching. Well, how much of that is session organization, explaining to the players what the game you're playing is or the drill is that you're doing. How much time are you working at the teams? How much time are you injecting humor, adding hustle, adding kind of driving the tempo of the session? Or actually, how much time are you just stood there watching, observing what's going on? Because as a coach, you're not necessarily there to tell them everything all the time. Maybe your role could be to step back and give the players the opportunity to play. I think sometimes maybe coaches have got the absolute best will in the world to go and solve lots of problems for the players in the group. But by doing that, we're almost acting like Google for them. We're giving them the answer straight away, and that doesn't really help their learning. So if we step back, yes, they're going to make mistakes. They're not going to get it straight away. And actually, one of our key qualities there is to have that patience and that positivity to keep reminding the players that, yeah, great effort, keep going. But by giving the players we work with time to just play and practice and have another go, have a replay of what you've just done, then actually learning will take place. And then the final one, and every single one of you will have seen this on a coaching course, is that plan, do, review model. And I'm not going to kind of go through the FA coaching fundamentals. You know that. There's a quiz at the end, by the way. The plan to review is so important. But look, think about yourselves as busy coaches. If we're spending more time planning and doing, as soon as we get busy, the first thing I feel maybe drops off for people is review. And actually, that reflection piece is so important. And actually, then when you get even more busy, the thing that drops off next is plan, and you just end up doing stuff all the time. And if you do too much you probably end up in the do-do, for want of a better phrase. But really think about how much time you spend as a coach developing yourself. So fantastic kudos to you all to be signing up and being here today. And how much that then helps you and your athletes, your players, when you go back into training. And just on that review model, I think when you go on an FA course, the way that the courses ask you to reflect is what went well, even better if, changes for next time. So a really straightforward template to think about, what are the best bits of your practice, what worked, what could you change, what could be even better if you really thought about it and tweaked it, because there's never a perfect coaching session. So that's a great way to reflect, but there's other ways as well. So reflection could be your drive home in the car. So we all do it. We all kind of analyze our sessions on the way home, think about all the things we could have changed. But maybe, have you got a coaching friend who you could call and you could have a chat to, and instead of it just being an internal monologue, have a discussion with someone who might challenge you and ask you some good questions, be effective. Also, other ways you could reflect, you could think about maybe a SWOT analysis. So this is an amazing time when we're not out coaching. I don't mean it's amazing that we're not out coaching, but it's an amazing opportunity to really reflect on what we do. So what are your strengths, weaknesses as a coach, and what opportunities have you got? What threats are there to your coaching being as good as it can be? And it takes a little bit of time to reflect on these things, but I guarantee it's worth it. And even if you find one thing that was a new idea that comes out of that process, then it's worth it. Some other ideas about reflection. There's models out there called thinking aloud. So that's about while you're coaching, actually almost trying to keep a track of what you're thinking when things happen, because what was the difference between you stepping in or deciding to stand off and step back? And actually, if you understand the things that make you make decisions in sessions, that will have a better impact on the players. And the only other one I want to share with you now, and I appreciate this is a whistle-stop tour of different methods of reflection, is something called sketchnoting. Came across it quite recently. Find it a really, really quick way of getting information down, but making it really easy to remember. So here's an example, some sketchnoting. So it's almost like a brainstorming chart, but then you just add some color, you add some animation to it that makes it memorable for you, and that helps solidify some stuff and makes you really think about what you do and how you do it. I've got a question coming from Joe just about stepping back and how much it might differ between different age groups. Well, I think maybe the answer to that, Joe, is probably it just depends. And you know your players better than anybody else. So it's about making the right intervention for the right person at the right time. And sometimes the right intervention is no intervention at all. It's just by standing there and observing some things. And I think it's about just getting a feel for a balance. Well, actually, if you're working with any age group, there'll come a point where maybe they need some support from you to help them move on to the next stage. But it's it's just, I guess, playing with yourself. How much time are they in that challenge zone that they're having to figure it out themselves before you step in? If you leave it too long, consequence of that is frustrated. Younger kids might lose interest. Older players might just get annoyed, and maybe you might lose. They might not necessarily see the value in what they're doing. And I guess the drawback of stepping in too quickly is that you're giving lots of information, maybe that they're not ready for yet. So it's about playing around with it. But again, this is an awesome opportunity to be reflective about, well, what have you done previously? Do I step in too quickly? And how do I know that I've stepped in too quickly? Because maybe in the games, when you come and play on the match day, players are still making some of the same errors and they're relying on you. So I think it's about balancing that out and just having a play with it, because you're never going to get it right absolutely every time. There's a lot of sense making with a coach there to do. I hope that helps answer your question, Joe. Okay. Next kind of key message is around a carousel approach to coaching. Again, you'll see this on the FA courses around trying to aim for the ball to roll for about 70% of the coaching practice. And I think, for me, speaking personally, that 70% target is so valuable to consider it in a longer term view. If you're starting training and you're going back in 6, 7, 8 weeks when training begins, whenever that is, well, actually, you might need some more time just to kind of reconnect with your players, rebuild some trust, and for the players to get to know each other again. Because for some coaches who are connecting with the players in their groups at the moment, and the social media is full of really creative ideas on how to do that, maybe the missing link is how the players connect with each other, because they don't get that quite as much. So maybe you need to give an opportunity for them to find ways of reconnecting, catching up, so then you can build into doing more ball rolling stuff over the next 2-3 weeks. But 70% is really important. So actually, the players spend more time playing than they do potentially listening to you or doing other stuff. So 4 things really to think about while you're doing this. And again, going back to Joe's question a moment ago, actually, it depends on your group. There's balance with all of this. So 1, planning activities that move from part 1 to part 2 without needing to move much equipment. That's really, really important, and actually a really easy fix. So, for example, I don't know, your arrival activity could be just a small-sided game. So you've got your pitch with a goal at each end. We've got a challenge tonight. We're trying to play forwards, and you've maybe set a challenge for the players. Right, when you get the ball in our game, at the first 10 minutes, if you play forwards 3 times before you score, goal counts as double, something like that. And then really simply, just add 2 lines across, and then we're playing one of those games where we're locked into different parts of the pitch, and now they're being forced to stay in an area to be released when they do play forward. And then when you go back into your game at the end, just take the lines away. And I think I on some reflection from myself, maybe 15 years ago when I was coaching, I thought, if a good coach is someone who can lay out 70 cones where it looks like a helicopter's about to land, and kind of dictate different parts of a practice and remember all this stuff, then I'm definitely not a good coach. I think through time, actually, I've realized, well, that maybe isn't fantastic coaching. Giving players a sample of the game, keeping things really simple is, and it helps players connect with what's important to them when they go and play at the weekend. Again, second point there, just allowing a simple practice design that's easy to explain to players. So I'm sure that a lot of you will have seen on the coaching courses you've done, kind of the use of things like whiteboards or notepads, just to kind of visualize the images for the players. So if you can set something up that sits on the side of your pitch, which has got your outcome for your session tonight with a little illustration of what that looks like. So when the players come in and they're dropping their drinks, they can have a glance over, they can see that, and then they can go and get straight in. So actually then as a coach, rather than you spending lots of time telling every player individually if they turn up what we're working on tonight, they can just take some accountability. So think social corner, they can take some accountability for that themselves, have a little read, go and start playing. And look, I fully appreciate that's not going to necessarily work with every player in every group in December when it's pouring with rain, but as almost a consistent environment to try and create, it's probably really good practice. Now, Wendy mentioned earlier on about kind of working with assistant coaches and kind of sharing with them the information that we're doing tonight. That's fantastic. So if you're lucky enough to work with another coach who's supporting you in your practice, what an asset that is. So maybe think about how you can best use them to get the most out of your time coaching. So really a very practical example, they could help you moving some of the equipment. So we're not just, it's all on you between the parts of the practice. That's a really simple thing. But there's so much other stuff that's on another level to that. So it's actually, my co-coach tonight is Jeff. Jeff, can you pick out 3 players tonight who are finding this hard and set them some challenges so they get some success? Or Sue, this tonight when we're coaching, maybe can you pick out 3 people that you're going to coach to their strengths? So rather than finding things they're not getting right, find 3 things they're doing really well and help them get better at that. Or even go and make sure you give 10 high fives tonight during training. So I think if you've got someone that you work with, there's no set rules on how you should use that assistant or that co-coach. But if you don't, you're missing a trick, because they could amplify all these messages that you're trying to get across and do some really kind of individual personal coaching with some of the players in your group. So get creative with that one. Think about how you can utilize an assistant coach if you use one. And then the last one here is about ensuring that arrival activity, practice and game, so everything you do in training has a really clear link to it. And that's crucial, because if you're doing different parts of your practice which have really different outcomes, then it's probably a bit confusing for the kids. And they'll come away from practice not really knowing what they've got better at tonight, which maybe sometimes is okay, but having clarity, so there's a golden thread, if you like, that runs through the start to the end of your practice is really important. And do you know what? I think maybe sometimes you're getting on the AstroTurf a minute after you should be, and it's just, you've got to work quickly to get things going. Well, I'm sure lots of you have WhatsApp groups set up with the parents of the kids in your sessions. Well, drop a message around to the WhatsApp group the night before. This is what we're going to be working on tonight. Get your kids to think about it before they come to training. So actually, half the work's done. And there's a whole other thing about parents. Well, we all know that parents sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge when it comes to coaching, but they could be our biggest asset, the biggest help that we have when we go out and deliver things. And from experience working in a few professional clubs, some clubs are very good at kind of keeping parents at arm's length and almost saying, right, you stand on the fence over there. We're going to do our stuff over here, and your job effectively is just to shuttle your kids around and bring them to and from training. But I think actually, if we want to be really effective and we want to create really strong connections and keep helping our players get better and better and better, if we have great relationships with those parents, then we're going to go such a long way to helping them understand what we're trying to help the children get better at. And then if the parents are on the same page as the coaches, then actually we can all work together. So parents could be a really useful tool. And if you think about like what's happening at the moment, we're working with youth age groups. The only way we can potentially get a challenge over to the kids, so we're helping them, almost taking it from our kitchen to their garden with some challenges we might set. We need to utilize the parents in that, and they could be a huge driving force. So if you've got some really good relationships there, then those moments when we're not with the players all the time, so like maybe your typical off season, you could use them as someone who could go off and set challenges and create an environment at home that helps them continue to develop and play. So, carousel approach. Elliot, you've written into the text about highlighting, recreating positive examples, more powerful. So I think that was probably linked on maybe the last slide, but absolutely, if you're able to kind of share some positive reinforcement, maybe rather than stopping the session to say that wasn't great, but stop it to say that was really good, and model best practice and good practice amongst the players. That's such a powerful tool, and the more you can do that, the better. Okay, next one really is around games. I'm just going to take a sip of coffee while you read the slide. I was really fortunate a few years ago to be on a coaching qualification, and Dario Gradi was a guest speaker on the course. For those of you who don't know who Dario Gradi is, he was kind of influential in the development of Crew Alexander's youth academy, and had been there for years and years and years. And a lot of players who came out of that program went on to play at big clubs in that region. But one of the big things that Dario said was, if I'm turning it to training, I don't want to see the coaches coach, I want to see the players play. And I think that is absolutely huge. It's about them, isn't it? That they should be front and center of all the activities that we design and we do. So think about giving the players more opportunity to try stuff out and get lots of repetitions without repeating stuff. So if you think about skill acquisition, so players gaining new skills, if we're passing a ball back and forth or dribbling through cones where we've got no interference, we do it over and over again, our performance will improve because we practice, we're getting better and better and better. But the opportunity of learning and knowing when to apply that skill in a game doesn't really get any better. So you'll find that you can do a passing drill, and the players can get really good at passing it back and forth in groups of 2 and 3. But when we come to the game, they're not very good at it because there's another team trying to steal the ball, and the distances and the angles and the types of passes become really different. So the training part isn't preparing them really well for the game part. So if you can have more of your training session that are games which have certain challenges structured into them, then you help paint the picture for the players to go away and then apply that when they come to the match, if you like, at the weekend. So a few points. Setting some challenges. So again, let's think about our role as coaches in the current climate that we're in, where we can't run training and we can't help in a practical sense. But maybe we're looking for a way to influence the players in our care when they're at home and doing stuff in their garden. And we can't control that, but what we can do is set some challenges. So a challenge for a player being at home could be, right, you send a WhatsApp out to your group of parents saying, right, in the garden today, I want someone to send me back, do a drawing or send a video in of the most creative thing you've done with the ball in the garden today. So I'm sure you get a whole range of answers coming in at that point. But what you're doing as a coach, you're not telling them stuff. You're setting a challenge. You're giving them a springboard to go and think for themselves, which is kind of what we want them to do when they're on the pitch. So think about when you design your practice, rather than setting lots of progressions to make it harder and harder and harder, can we set lots of challenges that give them opportunities to think differently about solving a problem? Because actually, when we go and we play in a game at the weekend, we never know what the strategy is for the team that we're playing, and we have to try and go and figure that out. So maybe one of the things you could do in training is set one team a challenge or a way of playing, and the other team, their challenge is to figure out how the other team are playing, how are they scoring points, how are they scoring goals, and that's a really nice way of challenging decision making, thinking skills in a football environment. Next one here about creating game realistic scenarios that the group can play out. So I don't know, a great example of this could be, I'm sure you'll all remember when Man City beat QPR to win the Premier League the first time round. Aguero scored that last minute goal. But what an amazing scenario that is. You've got championship winning versus relegation survival. One team's got 10 men. We're into the dying depths of the game. We're losing, and if we lose, our biggest rivals will win the league. I mean, it's fairy tale stuff. But actually, if you look at the way that Man City needed to play in that last 5 minutes of the game, they'd have to be attacking, they'd have to create overloads, they'd have to take lots of risk. And for QPR, for them, it's about maybe some emergency defending, sitting deep and playing on the counter-attack. Well, from a certain scenario, there's some really clear technical outcomes. you don't have to necessarily tell the players what the technical outcomes are, but if you set the scenario and allow them to play it out for 5 minutes and then maybe have another go and another go, you're giving them a chance to recreate some stuff that actually happens in games. You can get creative with it too. You don't just have to set all these challenges yourself. You could ask the players to come to training. So maybe next week, I want to volunteer who's going to come with a scenario for us to play out, and then they own it. It's their challenge. The yellow football on the box is about restrict, reward, relate, which almost links to the green one about different approaches to coaching. So games-based coaching is something that has been researched and evidence to show is really effective to develop skill and keep engagement and give players that self-determination so they feel really motivated to play. So I guarantee, I'm sure if you ask lots of the kids in your groups, what do you want to do tonight? Playing a game is probably right up there, one of the first answers that comes out. So let's do that then. We can play a game, and then as a coach, our skill could be to structure and set appropriate challenges in that game. So there's an opportunity for learning and development. So to give you a few examples of what games-based approaches to coaching could look like, that first one, restrict, relate, reward. That's a constraints-based approach to coaching. So you could have, let's say, a really commonly used restriction we could say on players is, right, when we're playing the next game, you can only use 3 touches. So every time you receive the ball, it's only 3 touches. So there's a restriction there which forces the players to play the game in a certain way. It's not the game, but it's a modified version of it to develop a certain set of skills. You could have a restriction with a choice, right? When you receive the ball, you can play with 1 or 3 touches. Because actually, we all know that having 3 touches when you've got an open goal in front of you isn't appropriate to the game. So giving them a choice now, I can use 1 when I can play it quickly, or I can use 3 where I've maybe got to be a bit more creative. It gives a bit more autonomy to the players in the way they play. So restrictions are really, really interesting to look at. Rewards, so that could be, right, if we pass the ball 5 times and then score a goal, that counts as 5 goals. Or if you as an individual can dribble past 3 players and make a successful pass, then you score 3 individual points, whatever it might be. So rather than stopping people from doing things, you're encouraging and rewarding even an individual, a unit, or the whole team to play in a certain way. And again, you can get creative with that and design your rewards around actually what are you trying to help players get better at tonight. And then the relate part comes back to it's got to look like the game. So if you're doing a practice on creative play in the midfield, for example, and you've got a reward there on a player to be able to beat an opponent when they receive the ball, or their pass has to go between two of the other team, then why don't you play that part of the practice in the middle third of the pitch? Because it relates back to where they would be using those skills and trying that in the game. So that's kind of constraints-based coaching in a nutshell. If you're interested in that and you think that might help your coaching, I'd search for Ben Bartlett on the internet. So Ben worked at the FA for years and years and years. He's now head of academy coaching at Fulham. He's got a master's in this and is exceptionally knowledgeable. So have a look at Ben's stuff. It's really easy to digest, and then it can give you some practical ideas of what that looks like. Another kind of games-based approach to coaching would be around a video games approach. So this is quite new and quite different, and it, I guess, operates in 2 different ways. On the surface, you could use it as just some sexy coaching. You could give players a range of tools that give them lots of autonomy about the way they play, but underneath it, the more deeper level of learning stuff is that you're helping players get better at making better decisions quickly and being reflective while they're playing the game. So it's really, really useful and actually expands wider than football. You're helping people become better decision makers. That's not just in your football. So to give you a really, really quick example of what that might look like, you could say we're playing a game, playing through the third. Each team has got 2 pauses that they're allowed to use at any time. So they could call a pause, stop the game, and make some kind of tweak or change during the practice. Or they might call a pause because they want to ask you for some help or a clue on how they can get more success, or change something about the game. So pauses work really effectively. And if you think about a young person playing on their PlayStation or their Xbox, well, actually, they choose when to press pause, unless mum and dad are shouting to come to dinner. But they choose when to make a change. The game isn't telling them when to do that. If you play Call of Duty on the Xbox, there's no Call of Duty coach stopping you halfway through a campaign saying, whoa, 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 you've got that completely wrong. You need to do it like this. The game teaches them, and the feedback you get is if you are successful with the mission that you're on, or if that going through the woods in that direction works, go this way, I might collect more coins, whatever it might be. So if you can give the kids the opportunity to explore pauses, and the other one I really find a nice one to use is replays. So I'm sure we've always been there, and something goes wrong, and we say unlucky, great try. Well, unlucky doesn't necessarily help anyone, definitely. But if you switch the word unlucky for would you like a replay, and that person gets the opportunity to have another go at it if they want to, then all of a sudden you're giving them the chance to get success, but they don't always have to take a replay. That's down to them. So just a couple of things to think about. And then the final one here, the blue one, keeping games fun, simple, and relevant. And I think that is the nature of what the games look like. Keep it really straightforward. The more simplistic you can be, the simple the idea, but the really effective the outcome. That's absolutely. Got a quick question here from F. Turner about, is there an ideal amount of challenges that should be set within a practice to be most effective? Again, you can probably guess my response here. It depends. Depends on your players, what you're working on, and what they need from you. And actually, sometimes just having one or two in there to start our work this week might be enough. And over the period of the month, the season, you can build on that. You can scaffold. One really nice link I see between video game approach to coaching and what we do as coaches is saving progress. It's almost like when we get to the end of our session tonight, we almost save where we've got to, and that's where we start next week, rather than just starting a whole new game every single week. I think that's really important to remember, because learning doesn't just happen kind of like this. Learning's all over the place. And you know what kids are like in your group. Sometimes they'll come and they'll be absolutely on it. Sometimes they've had a bad day at school and they just want to play. They're different every week. So think about how you help just build and structure and scaffold the challenge week on week. Yes, fantastic comment here as well, coming in about taking a player to the side and setting them an individual challenge. Brilliant. So I had a staff training day in my old job at Arsenal, and one of the people on the other team, Harry might actually be in the call, but Harry was challenged that if he nutmegged someone during the game, he scored an extra goal for the team. Nobody else, his team knew about that, but nobody on my team knew. So we got really good throughout the game at trying to spot what people's individual challenges were. How competitive can that get as well? So you can set individual challenges to kind of almost dial up or dial down the level of challenge for the individual. Conscious I'm rambling and it's 11:15 already. Okay, be creative with your time. So look, we've got a finite amount of time when we come to training, an hour and a half, and we need to try and invest that really well, rather than just keep doing some of the same stuff. And I kind of assume lots of you are on the call because actually maybe you want to be better at this when you go back and get on the pitch. So just a few ideas here, just about things you can do that could really support this. Combining your drinks breaks and your chat breaks. So when the players go off and they take 2 minutes and you're setting the next part of the activity up, maybe you ask them a leading question that they go and they talk about during the chat break. Something I saw that I thought was really impactful was a shout out board. So the coach would put a whiteboard on the side of the pitch, every player's name down the side, and then every break, the challenge was if you've noticed someone else do something really good, give them a shout out. So you went and wrote in something next to their name about what you liked about what they did. And that could be something technical. It could be that someone gave you a thumbs up. It could be that just someone came and made you laugh. It doesn't matter. It depends on the age and stage of the players. But giving them some kind of activity during their breaks, which keeps them really engaged, could be really worthwhile. And again, it depends. if it's December and freezing cold, you might not want to do that. You might want to just get back into the next part of the practice, and that's fine. Almost consider it like another tool in your toolbox. Spoken about this one already, using a whiteboard or a pad to outline the outcome. Again, from your coaching courses, you'll know all about the different learning styles and preferences. So visual learners, audio learners, people who prefer to read stuff or just prefer to do it, that kinesthetic. So give them a range of that. But using a whiteboard helps give a consistent message all the way through. Simple, practical stuff. Make sure your footballs are out of your bag rather than that scrum to try and get into your bag when training starts. Just keeps it safer and easier for people to get a ball. Or while you're playing your games, having the football spread across around the pitch. Really, really simple idea, which I'm sure lots of you do, but it makes a big difference. Because I'm sure you notice when the ball goes off and it's rolled onto someone else's part of the AstroTurf, you've got 12 kids stood there looking at each other, waiting for you to go and send the next ball in. Well, that doesn't give them autonomy or ownership, and they're relying on you to generate their practice. So think about having some balls around the edge. If you don't have the luxury of having lots of footballs, maybe set a challenge. If it goes off the pitch, whoever gets it first, it's their ball. So now all of a sudden you've got the goalkeeper and the striker who's just walloped it over the bar, chasing to get the ball because they want to keep it for their team, and it increases the intensity through the sky. And then last one here, just designing practices that have got elements of in possession, so attack, out of possession, defense, and transition. Because if we just spend all of our time doing an in possession practice and then we have to rewrite everything to do an out of possession practice, we're not being effective. So to be really efficient, well, actually, if you're doing a game and you're working on one team creating an overload and scoring, well, actually, the other team have got an opportunity to practice defending while outnumbered. So you've almost got two different things going on at the same time. So bear that in mind and really think about, well, if I coach X, then actually the trade-off is we get more of Y. And that sounds really, really vague. But to give you an example, if you're playing a game and you are encouraging your players to defend deep and play forwards, but you don't have 22 players at training for your 11v11 squad, you take out players and you substitute them with, for want of a better phrase, artifacts or equipment. So these two players here would be my left and my right winger. We don't have a luxury tonight because we don't have those numbers. We've got a goal to play into. Well, actually, that makes the type of practice that you do really effective and really relevant for the players that you do have and the players that you're working with. Okay. Last one, play. No matter what age or stage of players that you work with, we as human beings are hardwired to learn through play. It comes from, if you look at animals and the way that they communicate and learn, through to young children, all the way through, playful activities and the opportunity to play is one incredible tool in your toolkit for coaching. Some examples of what that might be. Play takes all kinds of forms and all kinds of different shapes and sizes, but if you can incorporate play into your practice in some way, shape or form, or just be playful within your manner, you've got an opportunity there to really engage and develop. So there's a coaching friend of mine. He's fantastic on social media, by the way, so if any of you kind of are active on there, his name's Richard Cheetham. He's a professor of play. I can't think of a more exciting job title than that. He talks about play to be your movie trailer. So imagine your arrival activity or that first 10 minutes of your coaching session. That needs to be like your James Bond movie trailer. So in a James Bond trailer, you've got action, you've got some romance, you've got some jeopardy, you've got a bit of mild peril, you've got all this going on. And as soon as you finish watching the trailer, if it's a good one, you think, I want to go and see that film. Well, actually, the start of your coaching session in an ideal world would be your play trailer for what does our practice look like tonight? What are our players going to experience in training tonight? And how am I going to prepare them for that in a 5-minute, high-intensity, high-energy game at the start? You can master that, then I guarantee the players who keep coming to your practice will return and return and return, and you will have them ready to do anything that you really want them to try in the practice. And I guess on the flip side of that, if you can design arrival activities in the start of your practice, which is a play trailer, think about Netflix and that you've got the trailers coming up at the credits coming up at the end of a program, and before you know it, you've got a timeline at the bottom saying the next episode will start in 5 seconds. How can you make your coaching sessions box set coaching? What is it about the way that you finish and you draw together your training that makes the players really hungry for whatever comes next? If I get really wordy and academic on you, I guess the start of your practice is to be divergent. So you give the players the opportunity to be creative, think in lots and lots of different ways, and none of those ways can be wrong because it's their way. So you've got to be on board with that. So you get loads of ideas coming out, but then the end of your practice becomes convergent. So you bring those ideas back into a point where we know where we finished, and then that links back into the saving practice. Focus on the effort rather than the outcome. So again, a really simple one. If you tell Frank that Frank's really good at maths, then Frank might be in two minds about trying a harder maths test because he's got the fear of losing the reputation of being really good at maths. Same goes for your number 9. If you tell them they're fantastic all the time, then actually they've got something to lose there. If you reinforce how hard they try when they come to practice, and how much you like that they tried to take a player on and they weren't worried about making a mistake, whatever it is, they can continue to build on that. So effort over outcome as a principle is really important. Playing for the sake of play, well, actually, kids are great at this, aren't they? You just kind of see any school playground at break time, and the kids are masters of play. They know exactly what they're doing. They're playing 17 versus 17, all in the same school uniform, and every single one of them knows whose team they're on. Or if you go into a preschool or a nursery, and they're kind of they've got these fantastic imaginations, and they kind of take you into these different worlds and these different spaces. Kids are awesome at playing. I think as adults, sometimes we feel like maybe there's a bit of pressure to be serious or to add some extra restrictions on really quickly. So the challenge to you guys as coaches, maybe try and be bold and brave about finding a time to step back, and maybe parts of your practice are just like, guys, stay in our area, stay on our pitch, here's a ball each, just be safe, right? But don't play, go crazy, and leave to it for 5 minutes. And I kind of fully appreciate that's a little scary to do sometimes, because it's chaos, and chaos is hard to control. But actually, you can then start stepping back and noticing stuff. Who goes off and does something on their own? Who just wants to smash the ball in the goal? That's fine, by the way. Who wants to do some keepy ups and practice this? Who's always looking for a partner and wants a 1v1? But if you give them that opportunity, you might start to observe some things that you maybe haven't noticed before. And that all links into that blue box there, just allowing the players to imagine, dream, be creative. And you can't teach creativity, but you can create an environment where creativity happens. So just think about all those environmental factors that happen around your practice, and are they right for your players each week that they come to training? Okay, that's all the slides. And just a few takeaway ideas for you, just to recap on what we've covered this morning. I was going to say tonight, and we used to doing these in the evening. So planning, make sure you give yourself some time, even if it's 5 minutes more than you're doing already, to plan something that's really simple, really clear, or engage the players in that process. Carousel approach, so it's an easy transition from part 1 to part 2 of your practice, and where you can use your assistants and your co-coaches to really maximize that time. That's amazing. Use games as much as you can because they're simple and they're fun, and that's probably one of the big motivations for lots of people coming. Be creative with your time as a coach. What can you do with the environment that you've got to make the learning experience as good as it can be? And get on board with the idea of play. Give the kids some high intensity, high energy, fun activities to do that get them in the zone, ready to perform, ready to play. So Richard Cheetham, I'll write his name into the text box. Oops, there's an M at the end, not a comma. Richard Cheetham is there. So we will open the floor in a second. So any questions that any of you have got, or anything that you guys want to talk through. I just want to share this slide before we do that, though, because I don't want to just finish and then everyone disappear. So we're obviously in a time where, as coaches, that there is potentially a huge amount of learning to be done. And when it comes to doing stuff in this online space, I wouldn't necessarily say that any of us are experts at this. We're all rookies at the moment. Even coaches who have been out coaching on the grass for 20 years, going and delivering a WebEx meeting or doing some online challenges for your players, we're all rookies. So we are lucky to live in a world where there's lots of different ways to access lots of different resources. So for any of you who listen to podcasts, there's 5 on there that I recommend, as well as the grassroots coaching podcast done by Barts and Bucks FA, which would probably go top of that list if I was to rewrite this. So the Magic Academy, Talent Equation, really, really interesting ways to look at coaching in a different way. And it's cross-sport and it's cross-level. So it doesn't matter if you're working in badminton with an Olympic athlete or in hockey with a beginner, all of these principles remain the same. There's loads of online stuff, so I'm going to put the little plug in here. UK Coaching, we deliver a weekly coaching clinic, if you like. We call it the Curious Coaches Club. It's every Monday, 2 till 3 in the afternoon. You can just go on the website and log in, and it's almost a conversation with a couple of coach developers. So, for example, we're doing it on Tuesday next week because it's Easter Monday. But myself and one of the other guys at UK Coaching will be talking about different ways as a coach you can develop yourself. Every week, and then what happens the next day, we have a forum where anybody who wants to log in can log in, and we can just have a chat about things that are happening in your world. Loads of webinars. Think about different things you can log into that maybe expand your network as a coach. So last week I logged into a webinar for the Canadian head coach for football and rugby coach as well. Listen to the different things they were saying, because effectively coaching is about people, isn't it? Some good documentaries out there, some good biopics. TED Talks are always a really good place to go and find stuff that can help you think differently. And there's some brilliant books out there which are built around coaching, but not necessarily football. Anyway, got about 3 to 5 minutes to go. Rich, I don't know how you would normally do this on a web call. But really open to if anybody wants to ask anything or talk about anything in particular that resonates in their world, then happy to kind of chat through any questions anyone's got.
That's it, Tom. Yeah, if people got a question, just raise your hand, which you'll find in near your name, or just put it in the chat box for a good 5 minutes. So just want to thank Tom for doing that, by the way. Really, really decent, mate. And thanks for the plug of the podcast as well. I appreciate that. Is there any hands up? Lots of good information there, though, Tom.
I don't know if I'm disappointed or relieved, to be fair, Rich. There's no
They might be typing away, you see, mate.
Yeah. There's going to be a bombardment in a.
Let me ask you a question while we wait. How have you found this last? Well, I suppose you've been a month into your role, UK coaching. How have you found the time spent in your house? I know obviously you had a new baby back in the last year as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I started, my first day was the day that Boris brought in the first round of social distancing stuff, not the lockdown, but the week before that. So I met my boss on the Thursday. The next day I got my laptop, and then since then my job has been a virtual reality job. So it's really different, I suppose. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. I've got a 30-second commute in the morning. I can go and see and play with my 15-week-old baby at any point. I think the thing that's helped me is having a bit of a structure. So just say, right, between 8 and 11, I'll be on my laptop. I might take half an hour after that, making sure I have some kind of contact with someone else at work during the day in some way, shape or form has been important. And going for a run as well midway through. I think having that balance and that structure helps me be more effective. And I think as well, it's funny, having a shower and just putting kind of not sitting in your dressing gown in your pajamas all day is really important. I think it just helps you just feel like you are doing something, you're adding value. That's been something that I think has been really important. It took me back to when I was about 14 years old, kind of putting my suits on to play a final in Championship Manager.
Love it, mate. We've got a question now from Sonny. Thanks, Sonny. For those who can't see it, I'll just quickly read it out. So, joined late, but he's thinking of taking a session with just the game all the way through, then drive-by coaching and stop-start. The boys are under 6 and under 7s. What do you think?
Yeah, cool. Why not? I think that's a great approach. I think if I was going to support you and watch you coaching, I might ask you some questions about, well, actually, when do you know it's the right time to progress the game? How do you know that the players are really engaged during this? And what are you doing while they're playing the game? Are you stepping back? Are you saying stuff? Um, are you doing individual? Are you split drive-by coaching? Brilliant, but who's that to? Are you picking out the players who are getting lots of success or the ones who need extra help? So the principle of just using a game, but having lots of different layers and different ways it could go off in different directions, I think is a cool one. So yeah, I'd really encourage that.
Sonny, I know you just got your video on. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. And the reason why I asked that, and to give you a bit of background, so I did my level 1 at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
And doing that level 1 just opened my eyes completely. As in, I wouldn't say what we were doing wrong with our boys before, but just open your eyes that it's got to be engaging, enjoyment, almost led by the kids, because they're 6 and 7 and they just want to play football non-stop, you know. And I just keep on looking at the sessions we do, and it's only 1 hour a week. So it's Saturday, we have 1 hour, and then we have our games on Sunday. So during the week, it's very limited of how much time we have with the boys. And like saying, all they do is just want to play games, and that's when they really thrive. And I don't know, it just seems to be this kind of mentality of, well, when they turn up, we have to do a few sessions, inverted commas, drills, which I've learned is now a dirty word. And the time they're literally saying, can we just play a game? Can we just play a game? And you think, you know what, let's just go for it. And then when they play a game, that's why I say stop, start, drive by. You can like see a certain kid say, well, why don't you come out here and see what happens and stuff like that. And that just seems to be a lot more beneficial and better use of our time, to kind of link into what your session is about here. But yeah, and again, I think doing the level 1, it's kind of opened my eyes of what the FA DNA is, how it links into the grassroots and all the rest of it. And we're lucky enough to have, say, 4 or 5 other dads who help out as coaches, but they haven't been on the level 1. And I keep on saying, you've got to go do it, because it will really give us more of a grounding of how we will progress with our boys as they grow up. So 2 points there really was what the FA doing now. Level 1 course is amazing. It's really good work with it that's happening. And again, I know Mitch Woodward quite well. He trains my boys on a Tuesday afternoon at school. And it just seems like everything, especially through the FA, is now joined up. And it seems like something is really working. There's this positive nature that's happening. But like I say, I've just done my level 1. I'm champing at the bit to kind of throw all these different kind of skills in, techniques and stuff. And then coronavirus hit. So I'm now stuck at home, kind of really wanting to get the boys involved. But I think all of this stuff is just massively helpful as a coach, and especially new into the game.
Awesome. Sonny, first of all, really love the fact you love the level 1, and it's kind of opened your eyes into kind of what great coaching looks like, and all the different types of things the principles of way you go and coach to kind of give the kids lots of that ownership and that accountability. And I think in a way you kind of answered your own question, talking about why the benefits of playing a game would be really good for your group. I guess the only thing I'd say is that it's not always going to work. It's not always going to be quite right. They're kids and they're really young as well. So there will be gaps in their knowledge, which is where you can step in and help them. So maybe just think about the types of games that you play. How do they help them fill in some of these gaps where they can, which is going to help them get even better at the game as time goes on. And that could be just playing around with the space you've got, playing around with any overloads or underloads. So does one team have more players than the other? Are we going to play with 2 footballs for the next 5 minutes or rather than 1? And what challenges does that create? And almost the sky's the limit then in terms of how you change stuff. And I'm sure you'll have seen, and I'm sure Mitch does a lot of when he comes to coach with you, is almost using the step principle. So how can I alter the size, task, the equipment, the people to make sure the challenge is really appropriate. And yeah, you could probably then become a bit of a games master in terms of how you design and set different challenges for them. And I'm sure they find it really exciting to come to.
Yeah. And there was one I learned recently, which was the 1-0 game. So when one team goes 1-0 up, then that team that's gone 1-0 up can't score. So they then have to start thinking of how do we protect the ball to stop the opposition from getting little things like that, and bonus balls. And kids at that age, like 6 and 7, you say, right, next goal is for the FA Cup final, and the intensity level just goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just brilliant seeing stuff like that.
I saw a nice one in hockey recently. Was if you cross the halfway line with the ball and you don't shoot, then you're locked in the other team's half. So then all of a sudden it encourages players to shoot quickly, but then they're working out when's a good time to go forwards and when's a good time to stay back.
Yeah.
And if they don't take advantage of it, then all of a sudden their team is outnumbered in defence. So I guess the 1-0 game's a great example, but I'm sure as coaches and with the coaches that you work with, you can start kind of thinking of some really cool challenges that the kids are going to really enjoy.
Yeah.
Or even ask them about, right, what challenge could we set that would give us more chances to score goals in the next part. And I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to have all the answers, but they might say something that you haven't thought of.
Yeah, which again is what we learned on the level 1. It's a kind of like, right, you guys, this is your session, but you come up with how you score your goal, be it a header, be it a volley, stuff like that. So we've introduced that into the boys' game as well, and there's some crazy ass things like use your bum to score the goal. I don't know, just things like that. It's quite funny, imaginative, I guess.
Yeah, and Sonny, I mean, I think with the age group you work with, I think the really important thing to remember as well is they're kids and they're little people, and scoring a goal with their bum is probably the funniest thing they've done all day.
It is. Yeah. But back at the beginning, that was the frustrating thing, because obviously us as adults have our way of, right, this is how we want it to happen. And at that age, I've learned it doesn't really work like that. It's kind of, they have to be engaged to kind of like really get the fulfillment from it.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, we're developing people first, and footballers second. So yeah, absolutely. Sonny, thanks for your question, and I hope kind of the answer in the quick chat kind of has helped a little bit.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Awesome.
Thanks, Sonny. We're just out of time, I'm afraid. I know we've got questions from Asif. Elliot's got his hand up. What we're going to do, though, we have got a Q&A session in about 7 minutes. So I'll just put the link on the bottom of the chat there. Tom, you want to stick around for the first part of that, just so we can...
Yes, mate. I'm going to refill my coffee, and then I'll
likewise. Just to quickly just point out those who are unable to turn, just a couple of things. Bear with me. Hopefully you can see my... Yeah. I'll take over from Tom. Brilliant. A couple of things. The FA Learning, I've got a YouTube channel which came out recently. So lots of details on there, lots of things going on, CPD webinars like this one and other stuff. Grassroots Football Coach, we had another special on Thursday around mental health. So in terms, especially at this time as well, it's a good listen that could offer support to people that may require it. So check out that. Emerson Boyce is joining us next Tuesday to relive the Wigan versus Man City game live. So he'll be going through exactly what happened there and how they played the title as captain as well. He's Aylesbury born, so it'll be a good chat for him. So just sign up on our website there. And we've got a special with Dennis Wine as well. So it's recorded, so there's an opportunity to put your questions in. And Q&A session is next. Tom Hartley's back on Thursday to do a podcast. So you can ask Tom even more questions then. And finally, take care. It's great to see so many of you here. I appreciate Tom doing that. It's really good to see you again, Tom. And the content was fantastic. So I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure, Rich.
Those who've asked questions, we'll answer them on the next call in about 5 minutes. But thanks for your time. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you very soon.